Definitely. Let's fill in the awkward
Okay.
silences with the interviewer.
Okay. So today's conversation is going to be around having those small talks during the interview, during the process of the interview. And small talks are the most integral part of the before even you start the interview process. One, it's something that you cannot avoid. Okay, it's bound
Mm-hmm.
to be there all the time. But the advantage of that is it helps you building the rapport. It helps you calm your nervousness if you are, because interviews can be
Mm-hmm.
inducing anxiety and stress in us. High possibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
People who are already nervous and starting that conversation can be very very stressful, and that is where small talks come and play, and hence they're extremely important and should not be ignored. So the reason why is
Mm-hmm.
it's important, I'll repeat again, it's one, it helps you build a strong rapport, because it is not necessary you will know the interviewer well in advance. Even if you have met him before, or you know him through somebody, but there's there's a certain level of uncomfort level and the stress and anxiety that's running through your nerves, right? So small talks kind of really help you build that, and that is why the small talks
Mm-hmm.
are very very important. Now, when we're having these small talks, there are few things one needs to keep in mind, is that avoid having cliche kind of conversation. When I say cliche, something like, when you're
Okay.
having small icebreakers, instead of talking about how
Mm-hmm.
do you think the weather is today? Oh, it's very humid,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there was so much of traffic. These are very cliche kind of a conversation. Why do I say cliche? One, because they are very, these are the conversations where you can easily lean on to, because every
Mm-hmm.
other candidate is thinking on the similar lines, like what you are thinking. So they fall under your generic conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
if you want to leverage small talks, in your favor, you need to have those conversations that are very different from others. Because small talks are a
Okay.
great way for an interviewer to remember you as a candidate. So when you leave the room,
Mm-hmm.
because of the conversation you started with him in the form of small talk, the interview is going to remember it was, if it was something very unique and different, and not very a generic conversation. You
Mm-hmm.
asking about the weather, about the traffic, about the direction, how it you know how it made it difficult to reach the office, so on and so forth. Instead, go for something very different kind of a conversation, and most importantly, don't leave an opportunity to highlight your skills every time in a very subtle way.
Okay.
So small talks play a
Mm-hmm.
very, very, big role in that. Second is find the common interest. While you're doing a
Mm-hmm.
research about the company, or before getting into the interview, do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
research about the interviewer as well. I must have told this multiple times in my previous lives and videos. Go through
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, do a thorough research on the interviewer. What are his likes, his dislikes, his
Mm-hmm.
hobbies, his ex companies, his school, his college, his masters. There's so many things they would have mentioned on LinkedIn. The kind of blogs he
Mm-hmm.
writes or the kind of comments he does. That is another way of starting your small talks, because everybody would like to get that attention. It's great, right, Anusha, if I come and tell you, oh, Anusha, I do understand you like XYZ.
Yes.
Wouldn't you like that some a
Mm-hmm.
stranger is coming and telling you that? It's like I'm giving you so much of importance there. So that is why do a thorough
Yes.
research on the interviewer, so that you are able to
Mm-hmm.
relate with him. One, the advantage over here when you do a research about the interviewer is, one, it makes you mentally very comfortable, because now you know something about him or her. Two, it is
Mm-hmm.
easy to break the ice. Three, it is easy now to build a rapport, because the interviewer will also show equal interest, because you're talking something of his interest. So the
Mm-hmm.
breaking that ice is it's just with a snap of finger there. That is true. So do a complete research on the interviewer also. Then mention something
Mm-hmm.
about the company. That's another way
Okay.
of doing the small talk. So talk about the company as well. While you're doing the research of the company, do some research on the company where you can come to common grounds of a conversation, maybe principles of the
Mm-hmm.
company or the culture of the company. You know, just don't
Mm-hmm.
ask the question, could you please help me understand what's the culture of the company? It looks very blatant,
Okay.
it looks a very vague dialogue. Instead, when you're asking
Mm-hmm.
such kind of a question, do some research of the company as well. And how would you know the company's culture? One, by going to certain websites like glassdoor.com. That's an amazing website. One should
Mm-hmm.
definitely go and see and understand the
Mm-hmm.
company culture. Okay, go and do your own
Mm-hmm.
research. Nothing right, nothing wrong. It's an open discussion that they do on that website, right?
Mm-hmm.
do that. If you know somebody from that company, your referral, your networks, anybody, have a conversation with them and try and understand. Three, you could also go to the website and figure out the principles. When they talk about the principles, principles are nothing but they're actually referring to their culture. Then you could say, you know what, Anusha, I did go through your company website and did find it so interesting. And there was one principle which called out very loudly, something about fairness and trust. Could you please help me understand how this really works in the organization? Now the interviewer, like, okay, fine, looks like this woman has gone to the website, done her proper research, and now she wants to know something more about it. Now that becomes a healthy conversation. So even if the interviewer is trying to tell you, he will also think twice because he wouldn't want to overly exaggerate because you've already seen the website, and that gives him an indication that Ashwini has already done some research of the company. So I need to maintain the boundary of the information as well. So that again falls into your favor when you do a proper research about the company. Then ask the interviewer some intelligent questions. That's another way of breaking the ice. Not necessary about the role, not necessary about the job interview. Something you could talk about in the common platform again. When you understand his interests, when you understand his hobbies, his education background, something you could talk about. Or maybe you could say, hey, you know what, Anusha, I recently completed this certification and these were my learnings. It is not necessary, all possibilities he might not even ask in the interview. But you started the conversation with something very, very crucial, which is so important for you. And there was so much of learning that happened in the entire process when you took that certification. Or you could say, hey, Anusha, I did see your profile and you mentioned, you've come up with, you have these expertise in XYZ. And I just want to know something more because I did hear about it, but I don't have much knowledge about it. So do you think you can help me understand? This is not part of the interview at all, but why are you doing it? Just to break that ice and start that conversation. And in that conversation, what is happening? The interviewer feels, okay, fine. She's one who's very curious to know something more. She's giving a lot of eye to detail to all the information that the kind of company she's getting into. So her interest is to know something more about the people. So that's the outlook the interviewer is going to have about you. Then just talking cliche something about the weather and the sun is so bright and I got stuck in the traffic. These are very cliche kind of a conversation. That is something natural. We all face that. So you don't have to really break the ice by talking something so generic in nature. Right? Then you could also ask questions, how will you show that you are one of the best candidate? You can you can revolve your questions around that by saying, these are the skills that I bring on the table, and this were my learning. In my internship, I learned something like this, and in my past experience, I learned something like this. And I see, if everything goes good, and I'm believing, once I join a company, it will just take closer to my aspirations. Even this could be your small talk. It is not necessary you need to have such conversations only during the interview. It is not necessary. You could just have the interview might just have, he might just request you, do you think you want to have a coffee with me, before we really start the interview? It can happen. I have personally done that with so many candidates just to break that ice and bring that comfort level. So I do tell them, do you mind having a coffee with me? So it's a corridor conversation we have in the breakout area just to understand. And most importantly, when you're doing such conversations, at that time also the interviewer is evaluating you. He will try and gauge your personality, your attitude, your behavior, the choice of words, your enthusiasm, your energy, everything he's going to still scan. So even small talks, hence they have such kind of conversations which will go for you and not against you. So the kind of words, the choice of words that you use, try to be always positive than being negative. For example, even if you were tired reaching the venue, don't mention that, oh, I got really exhausted. I felt as I was lost. I couldn't find your office. Don't say that because then you are showing that you got tired. It's not nothing wrong talking about it, but idea here is not to talk anything negative because you have to create an aura of positivity around there and not tell them I was exhausted when I got off the train, when I got off the bus. I didn't get my car parking, blah, 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 blah. The list can just go on, right? Instead, talk something positive. For example, hey, I love the venue of your office. It's such a beautiful venue. I see hilly mountains around. Seems it will be cool, breezy here during winters and rains. What's your experience? See, now people will like to have those conversations. Then talking about, oh, I sweated a lot. It's so humid. This, then just cribbing about something, rather talk something good about the environment. Here, I really like the touch and feel of the office. Really made well, thought process. There was well thought about the office structure, all of that. So that could be another way of having a small talk. Then you could also talk to something uncontroversial conversations. I will highly recommend that one should really avoid talking about politics or anything related to religion, because you don't know the opposite person belongs to what religion. You wouldn't know that. And if you unintentionally blurt out
Offend them.
something, that can really put you on the spot. Because nowadays, if you see there's some names, you can't even figure out what religion they belong to. It's very difficult to understand, right? What religion you are. So better to be away from that. Don't even strike a conversation comes to politics and religious matters or some cultures of the countries, or your personal cultures, unless the interviewer is talking something about, assuming he does that, politely say, oh wow, good to know that, but I'm sorry, I don't think I seem to know much about it, so I will not want to comment. So this also gives a impression to the interviewer, saying, "Oh, be fine." When she doesn't seem to know, and she's acknowledged that she doesn't know, and she's just not some nonsense. Instead, she's saying, "I'm sorry, I don't know, so I just refrain myself from saying something." That again goes for you and not against you, right? Because these are very, very sensitive conversations that you just don't know how the other person is going to perceive you at that moment, and you don't want that to be a reason for rejection, at least. Right? So when it comes to controversial kind of a conversation, just refrain yourself completely. And if the interviewer happens to say something, if you are confident, then say, but I will still recommend as an HR not to touch that area, because in the flow of the conversation, if something you blurt out unknowingly, unintentionally, that might go against you. Okay, that is one. Most importantly, be an active listener. Even the small talk, you have to be an active listener. Your body language, your gestures, your posture, your eye contact, everything being seen by the interviewer. When you're listening to knowledge by nodding your head or using some words, okay, fine, oh yeah, that makes some sense, something like this. Keep acknowledging, so the interviewer also knows that you're showing so much interest in the conversation, you're acknowledging, and moreover, it's a sign of respect, and we all need to respect each other, right? So these are the few gateways I wanted to share. And if anyone from the audience has a different experience, please let us know in the chat box. Share your experiences. These are learning sessions, and we would love to hear all of them.
Okay, ma'am, we have an opening question today.
That is,
Shubham wants to know that he wants to switch his domain. Is it possible?
of course, it is very much possible. So, if you want to switch the domain, if I may ask, from what domain to which domain do you want to switch, Shubham? But answering your question, yes, it's very much possible. In fact, when you go for an interviews, you may want to express the reason why you're looking for switching to domain number one. You may also look at enhancing your skills related to that domain, maybe take up some certifications or some courses, or do some freelancing job before you get into the actual full-time job. These are other ways you could add to your interest. But can single course will be sufficient to join HR? Okay, to start, it can be a stepping stone, Shubham, for you. It could be definitely be a stepping stone, but it totally depends what course you're joining in HR. It has to be a professional one and not a very regular one, which is not recognized in the industry. So I will highly recommend, if you're doing an HR kind of a course, you go for a renowned institute and have those courses done, because it will definitely have some value to it then.
Do follow, like, and subscribe to our social media channels on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. We are everywhere. So if you have any interview related questions or any kind of sales need, we are there for you. If you need a job as a BD, inside sales, we have a few openings right now. Do check it out on those on do check those out on our website www.interviewcracker.com, and you can, who knows, you might get hired.